All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Melanin Margin. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams,
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
and this is the talk show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the spotlight and uplift the Black voices that will no longer stay silent. So let's get straight into this week's race conversation: mental health in the Black community. Now, Daquon, do you think that mental health is an issue in the Black community?
Oh, 100%. I was looking at the numbers recently, and I remember seeing the statistics that was like one in every five African Americans will have some type of mental health illness or mental health crisis within their lives. And I think that it's one of those things that it's so prevalent within our communities, and we don't have the conversations that we need about it. So I think that's one of the greatest issues that we have is having these conversations about mental health, recognizing what mental health is, but also how do we, maintain our mental health? How do we talk about our mental health with other people? But I will pass it off to you. Do you think it's an issue in our community?
Absolutely. I think it's a bigger issue than people are making it out to be because oftentimes mental health is almost never discussed in Black households. There's really this big issue in the Black community of like, don't ask, don't tell kind of situation where it's like if someone is struggling with a mental illness or a mental issue, or if there is mental illness that runs in your family, it's almost kind of just like the black sheep kind of situation.
Right.
It's never brought up, it's never talked about, and it's always like this kind of monster under the bed kind of situation. And I find that um it's extremely problematic because the reality is there are so many people, especially in the African American community, that definitely struggle with mental health issues, but don't feel that um, that it's okay to speak about it. It's okay to bring it up in those kinds of households because even among Black friend groups, I mean, to hear about someone having an issue with mental health is almost like oh my, like it's just oh you crazy, oh you this, oh you that, it's something wrong with you, or whatever the case may be. And it's always this very um disruptive kind of attitude towards it, like it's just something that should never be discussed. So it's absolutely a problem in the Black community, absolutely.
Yeah. So I was wondering in terms of like how we have mental health talks, like how do we get these conversations started about them? Since it is such a problem in our community, we need to have these conversations. What do you think is the best way to start having these conversations or intervening if you think a friend is having a mental health crisis?
I think that when it comes to mental health intervention, I think that it's important to be open to that person, but also understand that that person may not be ready to receive aid just yet. Because the consensus oftentimes in the Black community when we are discussing mental health is that it's white people shit.
Right.
And it's honestly such a problematic phrase that I have heard so often in Black households and in Black neighborhoods and in Black schools. It's white people stuff. Black people don't have those kinds of issues. And I think it stems a little bit from the like you said before in a couple episodes back about we just as Black people we're kind of trained not to show weakness because it's always seen as a we already have a notch down on the totem pole, so to add being weak or having a disability is a additional problem. So I think that when we're talking about intervening or trying to help someone who has mental issues, especially if they're African American, I think that what the best option to do is to let them know that it is okay that they are struggling. It is okay that they don't always have it together. It is okay
Right.
that there is a problem that you're having, and it's normal to have it. Just as you said, those statistics state that it's extremely common for people to have mental health issues throughout their life, regardless of their cultural background or race. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. I think that in having these conversations, like it all starts with coming from a place of compassion. But also it's a lot of kind of destigmatizing mental health. Like you talked
Yes.
about earlier, how mental health or therapy or all of that things are talked about as like white people stuff. And
Yes.
I think that that stems from a lot of like the accessibility issues that comes with mental health. So you can't say it's white people stuff because you have to think about, who are the people in mental health capacities in terms of the profession, but also like, you have to have the insurance to be able to pay for it, or
Yes.
finding all of these different resources. And these
Yes.
resources are not made available to a lot of Black communities. So, in a sense, it is white people stuff because that's
Yes.
the, target audience of these mental health resources. So, I think in kind of destigmatizing how we see mental health, we need to be able to recognize that mental health is something that all of us deal with. It's something that
Yes.
we all, should be making sure we're taking care of, but also recognizing the barriers that come with getting help.
Yes.
Recognize the barriers that come with accessing mental health clinics or hotlines or all of these other different resources that are available, and making sure that we can find resources that not only speak to the mental health crisis that whatever we're going through, but also our identity as Black people or the intersections of our identity as well.
Yes, I really wanted to jump and piggyback off of what you just said about the resources. That is one of the biggest problems, I think, in the Black community in response to white supremacy. Because if you notice that whole, like you said before, with white people stuff, or it's white people this is at the forefront, because it is mostly accessible to white people. White people are usually, unfortunately, the way our society has kind of been created is they are a little bit more oftentimes well off than other African Americans, and they are oftentimes in areas where they're able to afford mental health, that there are mental health clinics that are available to them, that there are mental health professionals that are readily available. There's the fact that it seems it's almost saying that most of the time more white people can afford the health insurance that's required to get mental health and or mental health treatment. And it's crazy because in the Black community, health insurance is a really touchy subject because not everybody can afford it. And even the ones that are like the free healthcare kind of stuff, there are very few uh, mental health clinics or mental health professionals. Usually it's more so focused on the physical. It's
Right.
about what is physically wrong with you. Are you sick? Are you whatever the case, or whatever this, that, and the fourth. But usually mental health is a discussion that's never even brought up. It's not even something that's even available as some of the features of certain health benefits, especially the more cheap on the ones on the cheaper end. And what I've noticed when I started my job, when I was going through the health insurance stuff and realizing where I fell and what I could afford, um, I realized that the more you look at these health benefits and packages and stuff, usually the lower packages, the ones that most African Americans are able to afford because they don't have, a whole bunch of generational wealth coming with them. The ones that we can afford are usually the ones that just go on checkup, yearly this, routine that. But mental health is not even an option for you to even try to get anything. Have you ran into some issues like that before, Daquon?
Yeah, so it's really interesting in thinking about like accessing mental health resources, especially like for my case, just being on a college campus, like
Mhm.
we have mental health resources that are available on campus, but I do know that a lot of people in the past, and our campus is trying to get better with this, but a lot of people have found that even in being able to access mental health resources, even if they are free for like us college students, it's
Yeah.
still one of those things that it's limited. So, for example, I have a certain amount of like our mental health kind of places called CAPS. I have a certain amount of CAP sessions for my college career. And then if I go over that, then, they might recommend me to someplace off campus or whatever. But then I'm
Yeah.
going to have to be able to like figure out what does my insurance cover? What can I afford to do? But also, even in kind of finding mental health resources, a problem a lot of people in the Black community here face is, finding Black mental health resources, because
Yes.
not everything you can talk about with a white counselor, just because they
Yes.
don't have that lived experience to really be able to understand and empathize with what you're going through. So there's plenty of different barriers to, finding mental health resources. But I also think that one of the biggest barriers is kind of starts at the home, and that's how we're raised. So I remember, going through a lot this past semester or past year, because college is not easy. Going to college in a pandemic is not easy.
Ah,
So like I remember just like being so down and just like in this dark place because of depression. And
yeah.
I called my parents, and, I called my mom, and like the first thing that she asked me when I, was talking about it was, "Oh, have you prayed recently?" And I think that, you know, you can worship whatever God you want,
Yeah.
religion is there for you. But
Yeah.
I do think that religion kind of causes this barrier or break in how we achieve mental health resources, because a lot of times Christians will be like, well, God will handle it. He'll take me out. But
Yeah.
I think that's a limiting kind of view, because, if you do trust in God, if you do believe that he will take you out, it might not be his direct hand, but it could be the hands of others that he's blessed for you. So I think that in thinking about how Christianity kind of serves as like a barrier to mental health, like we need to start rethinking about, what the role of God is in terms of how we get mental health help.
Yeah, I completely agree. Christianity is it's a very loaded conversation because it has been both a saving grace and a detriment to the Black community specifically. And I know that, like I said before, like you just said, I want to make this very clear. I'm not dogging on Christianity. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. But what I am saying is that there seems to be this stigma or this belief that God is a genie. Like you can just, and he's gonna just fix all of your problems. That's not how God works. Like
Right.
that's not how getting help works. You know what I'm saying? And I think that the craziest thing that we have is kind of like this call and response kind of thing. Like if we say, God, I'm depressed, and God's gonna be like, you know what? In the name of Jesus, you're not depressed no more. Like that's not how that I don't think like like that's not how that works. And for a long time growing up, because I grew up in a Christian household, Southern Baptist, and I was so terrified as a kid when I was going through a lot of my depression, borderlines, personality disorder. Like when these things were kind of developing in my psyche as a young kid. I was so terrified of bringing up my struggles to my parents, and it's not because they weren't, listening or they didn't care, but it was almost kind of a shame that came with saying that I need help. You know what I'm saying? I had done all the praying. I mean, I prayed and 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 prayed, and nothing was getting better. I was still feeling so bad, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And finally, I remember in seventh grade, I was talking to my mom one night, and I was like, Mom, I need help. Like I need some psychological help. Like this, I am going through a lot right now, and I can't handle this. I just can't. And she didn't understand fully, and it was the same thing. Like, well, have you prayed and have you whatever? But thankfully, she was like, all right. And I was like, because I came back to her again. And I was like, Mom, I am not okay. This is not okay anymore. What I'm going through is going to lead to some bad things. I need some actual help. And she was like, all right. So we went to get some help, and I got to a therapist. Thankfully, our particular health coverage at the time did cover it, and I was able to get the help that I needed at the time. But it just harkens back to that idea that when you look at, there's this one story that I read about this guy who was on the ocean. It's an old Bible story. and he was drowning in the ocean.
Mhm.
And he was like, just, oh my, he was about to die. And a boat came by and it was like, hey, do you need some help? And it was like, no, thank you. God will save me. God will save me. I'm a worshiper of God. He's going to save me. And he's like, okay, got you. So the boat went away. Then another boat came by and it was like, hey, I can help you if you seem like you're trying to need some help. And he was like, no, God will save me. God will save me. And by the third time, the person came and was like, hey, I can help you. Like, do you need some help? He's like, no, God will save me. And then he drowned. And then when he got to heaven, he was like, God, what's the tea? And he was like, bitch, I gave you. And he didn't say that, but I'm paraphrasing, of course. But God was like, I sent you 3 different people to help you get out the ocean. You just didn't choose to get there. And I thought that
Mm.
story really spoke to me, because the reality is, if you believe in an all-powerful creator, then you must believe that the fact that God created people to help you.
Right.
He created doctors. He created therapists. He created these people to help you through these things. He created these people because he knew that you would need help that he can't give you from the sky. You know what I'm saying? The help that he can't directly interfere with. You know what I'm saying? And I think
Yeah.
that that is where we have this consistent problem, is that there seems to be this over reliance on religion to the point of like, it's almost the idea of like, that, what is that? Jesus take the wheel. It's kind of like, if
Yeah.
you holding on to a car and you driving down the road and you let go of your wheel and close your eyes and you say, God save me. God ain't magic. You will
I'm gonna
die.
swerve.
You go swerve. So I wanted to ask you, Daquon, personally, have you had to kind of overcome some religious upbringing that may have made you think that, did you experience the kind of same shame I'm talking about, is what the question I'm trying to ask you?
Yeah, I think that for me, it was kind of similar. Like I knew something was wrong, but I never wanted to say something was wrong. But I think more importantly, it was that idea that like I just needed to be strong by myself. That if I needed help, like then I'm weak, which should not be the case. Like point blank period, like the strongest people are the people who know when they need help and how to get help.
Yeah.
But I always had that idea in my head that I needed to like keep up this facade and like
Yes.
present myself as just like being all right. But in reality, there was plenty of times when I probably should have gotten help, but I didn't. And then I just like struggled on my own. Um, but I do think that there are times when help is just not available. So I had to be able to create different practices and different things that
Yes.
I can do to like kind of engage in self-care or just like be able to like bring me in and feel like, okay, in this moment, how am I feeling? Am I okay? Am I not? If I'm not okay, like what can I do to make me feel better? You know, it might not cure whatever it is, it might not solve any problems, but like at the end of the day, like sometimes you just need to get to the next day and get to the next day and like keep on pushing on. So I found that a lot of times I've had to create my own different like self-care routines or
Yes.
different things so that I can be able to be like, all right, you know what, this is me time. I'm going to be introspective. I'm going to reflect on like who I am. Like I have a journal that I've literally had since high school. Like I literally will go back and like look and be like, you know what? I was dealing with this as a freshman in high school. And like me looking back now, I'm like, that was not a problem at all. So sometimes you need those practices where you can figure out what you're going through, but also be able to log, okay, in this situation, I was going through this. What
Yeah.
worked before? And
Yeah.
being able to keep a record of like what makes you happy or what makes you feel better whenever
Yes.
you are going through a situation because like we said before resources are there but like there are also a lot of barriers to resources so sometimes you need those practices to keep you going until you can get that help that you need but I'll pass it back to you. You know, what are some
Yeah.
of your ways to like you know when you are feeling down and like you don't necessarily have help or can't get help right then
Yeah.
what do you do to like help you bring you out of that funk?
For me, it's been a rough journey, I have to tell you. Like I said, I don't consider myself a Christian, but I do believe in a spirituality and connectedness to a God of some kind. And for me, the way, and I wanted to kind of go back a little bit on what your question was earlier when you talked to me about how religion can actually be used as a another tool. I feel like religion can help give you some strength, but you still need to have tools to help you along the way as well. Religion is a tool. It is not an answer or a solution. I think that's what you were getting at there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I had to actually when I was in college before I graduated, I went to a my guidance my advisor, and I specifically requested to go to an abnormal psychology class because I don't have health insurance. I didn't have health insurance at the time, and I didn't have any way to get any kind of mental health uh, assistance, and I was still struggling with my own personal issues. And I went to this abnormal psychology class, and I was just reading the textbook, and it was such an amazing experience for me because finally being able to go through these texts, especially when we got to the disorders, which is what the professor was saying, that it is one of the everyone's favorite part of the disorders. And
Mhm.
I guess for me, it was my favorite part for a different reason because it was finally giving me the language to describe what was going on.
Right.
And I'm sorry,
Take your time.
but finally being able to know that I wasn't crazy, finally being able to know what was wrong, it gave me power back over my life. And people don't understand how difficult it is to not know what's wrong, to not know what's going on, to not have the access to get the help that you need. I was only able to go to that therapist that I did when I was in seventh grade for about 2, 3, or 4 or 5 sessions before I had to move, and we were in another place, and things happen, and things just kind of go on and on and on and on. So it wasn't until I went to college, and I was well into an adult at this point, and taking this class and realizing I'm so depressed, I'm so this, I'm so that, what is going on? Like, I'm fucking crazy, going through the whole thing about trying to figure out like what is wrong with me. And then taking that class and finding the language and seeing this is me, reading the chapter on borderline personality disorder, and actually fully looking at all these things helped me find ways to get the tools I needed to be better, to help myself.
Right.
That was power, Daquon, power that I was finally given. I was given autonomy again in a life where I felt I was always all over the place. I thought it was because of my sexuality. I thought it was because of not acceptance. But this whole time, I know those things had input, and there were reasons as to why I developed this particular disorder. But I could not understand why. Okay, I'm gay. My mom accepts me. My dad accepts me. Whatever. Why am I still like? Why is no one still? Why am I still? Why do I still feel so all over the place? And looking at that chapter, realizing this is what I am. This is the problem that I'm dealing with, and then seeing the tools, because in these particular textbooks that we were in this class, it taught the different methods of how to the treatment options in the
Right.
same chapter. So I was able to look through that chapter and find tools for myself and practice these tools of I have a whole thing in my room with like how to be okay with being alone, how to love myself, and how to be okay and understand how to play the game of fact and reality. Is really what's going on? Is what I'm thinking is going on, kind of thing. And those tools, along with my spirituality, help me maintain the strength to keep going every day. I did not expect to go as far. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. I really appreciated you sharing that because I think that that is a problem that we face in terms of we always want to like demonize mental health issues or, something's crazy, like, you
Yeah,
should be crazy, but we need to rethink how we use the word crazy because as I said before, 1 in 5 African Americans have some type of mental health issues throughout their life. Like, this is something that we all go through. Like, you
yeah,
can literally sit in a room with your family and like 2 or 3 of them will be going through something, because it's so prevalent and it happens so much. But also, I think that even within some of our circles who do kind of, promote mental health resources or want people to do better, I think we still demonize the real issues that come with mental health. Like,
Yes.
I remember, scrolling through TikTok or YouTube and like seeing friends clean up each other's depression rooms. Like, we don't talk about some of the things that happen, like when you go deep into the depression, when you're hoarding stuff, when you have trash all over your environment because you feel like trash. We don't talk about the people who are so depressed that, they can't shower. Like, they don't have that
Yeah.
motivation or energy to get up and take care of themselves because they don't see that worth within them. And we're
Yeah.
so quick to just be like, oh, they're lazy, they're crazy, like, oh, they stink. Like, we come with all of these different judgments of a person's character based
Mm-hmm.
off of something that they're going through. Like, any type of mental, like, I think of it this way: any type of mental health issue or moment that you're going through, like, that is an experience. That is not
Mm-hmm.
who you are as a person. That is not your
Mm-hmm.
character. That is not your identity in a way.
Yes.
Like, we are all more than our mental health, but so often we just get chalked up to like, okay, they're crazy, or they're just they're a depressed person, like, what, we're not going to hang out with them. But in
Yeah.
reality, like, we need to start being able to separate, something that somebody's going through versus who they are as a person. And we can't make judgment calls based off of something that happens to so many of us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel that a lot of the times, especially like I said before, when I was discussing my mental issues, I realized that a lot of the conversation that surrounds, especially like I said in the Black community, but it's also in other communities too, to varying degrees. But specifically in the Black community, it's kind of like when you bring up mental health, especially to Black parents, the first thing that they say, I don't, and I'm not saying this to be like, oh, my mom was, whatever, but I'm just saying that like the first instinctual response in Black parents is kind of like, well, what do you have to be sad about?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, what do you
right.
have to? Why are you upset? What's going on? Like, what? There's nothing going on. There's nothing. What? Like, you have everything you need. Like, I don't understand why you're saying that you're depressed or you're this. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense, and it further perpetuates that shame that
Right.
you shouldn't feel what you feel because your life is so great. It's so much better than someone else. And there was this comment I heard someone say, I don't know who it is. If you know, please reach out to me, comment down below. But it was this comment that someone said that when it comes to mental health, when it comes to bad days, money, a position in your life does not dictate whether or not you should be healthy mentally.
Mm,
You can be the richest person in the world and still feel like crap. You can be the poorest person in the world and still feel completely elated and joyful. Mental health and money do not, there is no connection there. Just because you have money, just because your life is quote unquote better than someone else's, does not mean that you are wrong for having a bad day.
right.
And I feel like that's the problem, especially in the Black community, where it's kind of like you got food on your back. You got not food on your back. You got clothes on your back. You got food in your stomach. The bills are paid. You got a little bit of. What's the problem? What's going on? And like you said, it makes you feel the shame of like, well, maybe I shouldn't be depressed.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't be sad.
And I think like it's one of those things that I think in society we have like this toxic positivity culture where like the default has to be happiness. The default has to be like you are feeling great. But in reality, like, let's move back to neutral. Let's
Yes.
normalize people just like having a neutral disposition. You don't
Yes.
have, like, happy should not be your neutral. If it is, great for you. Like, I love people who are happy all the time, but also I am not that person. Like, I will
Yeah.
wake up sometimes and I'm just like, oh, I'm in a mood today. Like, today,
Yeah.
not going to happen. Like, don't talk to me for a couple hours. Like, if you talk to me, you know, text me first, don't call me.
Don't call.
Text me, give me that warning so I can like prepare a response for you. But yeah, like I was saying, like happiness does not have to be like the given.
Yeah.
And even in happiness, like everybody feels happiness differently. Everybody has different levels to their happiness. So just because you have a good life doesn't mean you're always going to be happy. And I think that we need to really reframe these conversations about what should be it, because at the end of the day, like privilege is not going to buy you your mental health. Like you were saying, like I could have these clothes on, I can be at this nice college, but like that doesn't mean I'm free from any type of mental health issue. Like it's still
Yeah.
going to impact me as it does any other person on this planet.
And understanding the fact that people, even the happy people, or even the people who present happy, are not always happy genuinely.
Right.
That's the thing that I think is the most complicated thing when it comes to mental health is people think that I'm gonna tell you about something. A couple years ago, I had a friend who was just the party person, always doing it, always wanted to be the go-go girl kind of thing. And I loved her. We were great friends. We had a really good time together. It was cool. It was cool. But I realized, that it seemed as though when I was going through some of my harder moments, that person was just kind of not there. They kind of slowly kind of like stepped out of it and weren't always trying to be here and all of that. And it wasn't until one day where I was going through a particularly rough patch in my life. And I was calling my friend and trying to just, talk about my whatever. And she just completely dismissed me and just completely was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, whatever, whatever. And it's like, I realized that like people seem to have this sort of image of what you should be feeling all the time. If you're because I consider myself an extroverted person on the outside when I'm with people and stuff like that, because of my career path and because of my direction in life. I can't afford to be, the way that I actually am. You see what I'm saying? I've kind of
Yeah.
put this performative happiness on, you know and that's how I present myself most of the time when I'm out in public. But sometimes I'm not able to put on the face all the time. And then there's the people who just want to go, oh, what's going on? Or what's going on in the fourth? And if I say to you, I don't want to talk about it, or if I say to you, I'm not ready to talk about that, or that's something I want to discuss with you, or whatever the case may be, or the fact that people think that, bitch, you've known me for 2.5 seconds. You think I'm about to tell you about my whole mental distress? The fuck? Like,
Child.
baby, what? And there was this one quote I saw. Again, I don't know who it is from. Comment down below if you know. But there was this thing that I heard, and I thought this really kind of stuck with what I was trying to present to myself. It's not that I'm closed off from showing my emotions, but there was this thing that she said, and it was like, vulnerability is not weakness, but people have to earn the right to see your vulnerability.
Mm, I love that.
Ain't it?
Say
Ain't
that
it?
again.
People have to earn the right to see your vulnerability. And that's what that's what people don't seem to understand, is that when someone comes to you, a friend, a family member, and they are in a crisis of some sort, or they're having a mental health day, and they happen to come to you about it, understand that that is a privilege that
Mm,
they're giving you. Understand that when someone is saying, listen, blank, blank, I'm going through this, and that, and the fourth, and I need someone to talk to. I'm just having a really rough day. Understand that that is a privilege. That is the gift to be able to see someone at that point in that point in their mental health issue. You see what I'm saying? And I
yeah.
think that that's something that we miss, is that we kind of don't give people the room to be able to express those kinds of emotions. Do you feel that?
I 100% feel that. Cause like I'm a naturally introverted person. Like there are so many times when people see me and they think I'm like rude or nasty or something, just cause like I'm quiet. I keep to myself. I don't like share too much if I don't know you. Like, and then
Yeah.
I'm always very like calculated. I'm always thinking about, okay, who are the people in this room that I trust, who are the people that I don't trust. Like, that's just how I am as a person. So
Yes.
just like that quote of just like vulnerability is something that's earned. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, when I am vulnerable with somebody, that's how you know like you are one of my ride or dies, because
Yeah.
I can share something with you and I trust you enough to like be able to give give me something out of it. And then I noticed, like, especially with one of my friends, like, we always go to each other about certain things, but we also set up those kind of boundaries of what we need to hear. Because sometimes
Yes.
when you are vulnerable with somebody, sometimes you just need to vent. Sometimes you just need to talk about your issues and like say, okay, this is what I'm going through.
Yes.
And there are some times when you just need that, and people will try to give you answers. And it's like, you are not my therapist right now. Like, I could see a therapist, like, whatever, like, but there are times when I want to vent, and there are times when I want advice. And like, me and my friend always talk about that whenever we're talking to each other. Like, okay, is this a moment where you just need to vent? Do you want
Yeah.
advice? Like, kind of setting up those barriers. I think that's something important to kind of start having in conversations with your friends, being able to be like, hey, you know what, I'm going through it, don't provide me any advice, I don't need it right now, but just like listen to me, because that listening ear could be everything to you.
And I think that that is some of the realest things I have ever heard from a friendship. That friendship you got is sickening, Daquon. You better pop off, because that is something that people don't talk about. And that's the boundaries. Because the reality is, I don't need you to problem solve for me.
Mm,
That's not what I came here to do. That's not what we came here for. People oftentimes want, and that's what, like I said before, again, when people are like, well, tell me what's going on, tell me what's wrong. And they want to, and it's kind of like, no, I just want you to hear. I just want you to be here for me. That's all I'm asking for. It's in the same situation with my friend, my former friend, is I wasn't looking for her to give me an answer about what I should do. There was nothing that she could do. All I wanted was support. And there was something that my other friend did. I call him my older brother. His name is Tim. And when I was going through this rough time, it helped me really realize who my real friends were and who my fake friends were, and who to actually keep in my life. And the craziest part is that I wanted her to be the real friend, and I
mm,
wanted him to be that other friend. And in adversity, we really do see people's true colors.
right.
And I was so ashamed of myself at not seeing who Tim really was to me, who he really was. And when I was going through that particular patch of my life, the friend who I thought was my real friend ignored me completely. But you know what my real friend did? My brother, my older brother, because that's what he is at this point. He came over to my house because he knew I was going through it. He said, come on, we're gonna go get something to eat. We went
Mm,
to McDonald's, sat down. He bought me something to eat. We sat down and we talked. We talked. That's all. We talked. He came home. He brought some food home for my family too, and he left. And he told me, if you need anything from me, any help with anything going on right here, call me. I'm always here. I'm always ready for you. I got you. I'm here for you.
wow.
That I was like, I was floored. Daquan, I was floored because I was not expecting that from him, because I had been friends with this other person longer than him. So I thought I had these expectations of what she should have been as a friend to me. And I didn't realize that the reality is I've always had a real friend with him, but I
Mm,
was never able to truly see it until I realized, wait a minute, when I'm going through my struggles, when I need to be vulnerable, this is the person who's willing to hear.
right. Those dark
And thank
times will bring out things in other people. You'll see who's there for you at your peak and who's there for you at your valleys.
and always making sure to return the favor when you can,
Right.
which I try to do for him as well. And we've had moments. I mean, it's crazy how close we've gotten over the years, and how much I didn't even realize. the relationship that we really had until that defining moment. And we were able to be each other's confidant. When we're going through some struggling times and when he's going through something struggling, I'm able to be there for him. I'm able to be the friend that I've always wanted for myself, and he's able to be the friend that I've always needed.
Mm.
Sometimes the friend that you want isn't always the friend that you need.
Amen.
And that is what I found out that day. So I think that that's a really good thing about setting boundaries. I think that understanding what you want from the conversation that you're having that communication with your friends or your spouses or your partners is very integral to developing a positive relationship and understanding how to work through, like you said before, the deep, dark spells. So I wanted to bring up this question too. Do you think that there is a such thing as a high functioning mental health issue and a low functioning mental health? Do you think there's a difference there?
Ooh, I think that we have a overemphasis on productivity in our society. It's a product of capitalism. We're always just like, okay, what can you put out? I think that, one thing that the label of high functioning is, which is a problematic label in certain terms,
Yeah.
is it places importance on how you're able to mask whatever you're going through. Like, it's
Yes.
not necessarily you are high functioning, it's you're masking what you're going through. And
Yes.
it puts that impotence that your normal, your default should be masking. And it kind of gives
Yes.
like this privilege to who can be able to mask any type of mental health issue that they're going through, which in reality, like, it's okay to go through things. It's okay to like be like, you know what? I just physically, mentally, spiritually cannot today.
Yes, I think that that is definitely very problematic language that we hear is high functioning this, high functioning that. And it's kind of like you said before, it's almost like, ooh, you're able to not be sad in front of people. Good for you. Like you're able to not make us uncomfortable. Great. And it's kind of like, where did we think that this was okay for someone to be struggling this hard? And we're like, oh yeah, that's great because they're making work. They're okay because a person is okay in society's eyes if they're going to work, if they're doing their job, if they're taking care of their kids. But fuck their emotions, right? Like fuck their personal stuff they're going through, right?
Capitalism.
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 It's extremely prevalent in the artistic community, like writers, dancers, actors, performers. They never have the discussion about what they say. A lot of great artists breed it out of pain, like music and films and stuff like that. They're pulling from these, really powerful, dark experiences and whatever the case may be. And what a lot of people say is that a lot of actors have to go to therapy. A lot of performers have to get this mental health help because they are struggling. And people don't seem to care because they're like, as long as you're making work, as long as you're creating something, that's all that matters. That's the high functioning. And just like I told you just now, when I go to work, when I go into my life, sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I have to put on a face. I have to. Doesn't mean I want to all the time, but I have to because it seems as though when I wish that we could normalize not being happy or great all the time. I really wish that was something that we normalized in our society. That when someone is saying, I'm just not having a great day, that someone's not trying to sit there and bring up their day. Sometimes you just want to feel bad.
Right.
That's sometimes all you want to do is feel bad in that moment. It's going to pass when it passes. No one's saying you need to stew in it all the time, but sometimes you just want to be like, listen, I feel bad and that's okay. But like I've noticed that anytime I've had struggles or whenever my struggles have not been able to hide behind my mask, people are always like, oh my God, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that, problem solving again. And it's kind of like, no, that's not what I need from you.
Look, we need to bring back appreciate from a distance. Like, listen, I appreciate you
from a
distance. Be at a distance.
And that's the thing, like people, I wish that it was more common because I think it's crazy how we don't have policies in place for mental health days.
Mm.
at work.
Ooh, that 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 just hit because I was thinking about this very semester of just like because last semester, COVID semester was shorter. They were like, we're going to pack everything in and had no breaks. They were like, fall break? No. Like, we're
You
going to make
thought.
you are going to class every day from the time the semester starts to the time the semester ends, and then we're going to push you out. And as students, like we had to fight, we
Yeah.
had to really tell these professors and these administrators that like you can't not give us breaks. Like it's one of those things that I, as a senior, as somebody that's graduating, like one of the craziest things to me is thinking about like, oh, I'm about to enter the workforce, like where it's like you literally work every day of your life until you retire, and you might get like 2 weeks every year to vacation time off, maybe some
Because
sick
that's
leave
enough
or
time,
whatever
right,
like
Daquon?
that. And it's like we need to normalize being able to take time to ourselves. But I also think that we need to normalize just like, as you were saying, like being in that stewing in like
Yes.
whatever you're dealing with and not being okay. Because I also think that part of the kind of hesitation to be vulnerable with other people, even therapists, is that people look at you and then be like, all right, point A, point B, here's your solution.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like, especially within the African American community with mental health, but also healthcare in general, there's a lot of misdiagnosing. People will tell you,
Yes.
here's your issue, and it's not actually your issue. Or they'll be like, oh, well, like, you need to do X, Y, Z. You need to get on these medications. And it's like, that's part of the hesitation. We don't want people to misdiagnose us, to tell us something that like isn't true. And it happens so often that you don't necessarily want to open up to people, even a therapist.
There was something that I learned in my abnormal psychology class that really shook the very foundation of my whole understanding of mental health. And my professor on the very, this was the first day of class. The first day of class, he just shaking foundations. We were in class and he was kind of like, so what is mental illness? And we were like, well, it's a disorder of the blah, 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 blah. And he was kind of like, no, 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 no. He was like, because an illness means that that's something that you can fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that's what it is. It's kind of like, no, because if that was the case, we could go in your brain, see where the bipolarism is, take it out, and you're done. That's what illness is. If you break your arm, we know what happened and we know how to fix the arm. If you get sick with a certain sickness or whatever the case may be, there's medications that specifically target that particular illness to get rid of it.
Right.
That is what medication does for physical illnesses. But he was like, mental illness is not real. He was like, mental disorder is not real. Of course, there are people who have disordered thinking, but mental illness itself does not exist, because the reality is those medications that people get or take are targeting certain areas, but they don't know. It's kind of like the way he described it was, it was so funny. He was like, imagine a wall. Imagine a wall, right? And imagine that the mental illness was this, that, and that, right? He said, now you take a hammer and you slam and hit that, and you slam and hit that, and you slam and hit the other part, right? Now you got the problem, right? But what's wrong, Daquon?
You got holes in your wall.
And that's what he was saying. He was like, yes, medications do help people. He wasn't saying that it doesn't work. What he was saying was, we don't know what we're doing. He said that most people oftentimes just be like, well, we'll give you this because you're making us feel uncomfortable. Or you're giving us because you're making, they problem solve in therapy. A lot of therapists sometimes. It's the idea of kind of like, well, you're having depression. Here's something that'll make you happy. Oh, you having bipolarism. Here's something that'll make you not that bipolar. Or you have this, here's that. They're throwing medications down people's throats, and people get addicted to it because the pharmaceutical industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Right.
The reality that he was trying to get us to understand is that a lot of times, especially with the less violent of the disorders, he said that a lot of times what people need to do is to slowly wean themselves off of it. to slowly find tools that will help them process their emotions on their own, because a medication can only go but so far.
Right.
And I thought that was such a powerful thing, because I was like, okay, this whole idea that we've been thinking this whole time that this medicine is fixing people, when in reality, sometimes it's handicapping people.
Exactly. I joke about that. Not joke, but I talk about that with my friend that majors in psychology all the time. I'm like, I figure out these things and I'm like, what is the field of psychology? Because all of it is theory. A lot of it is theory. And I
Yes.
think that's part of it. Like, my friend was telling me, a lot of it is theoretical because the only way we can like truly figure out if this is going to be the end all be all is if we
Yeah.
cut you open and start dissecting your brain or whatever. And, of course, you can't do that to people like that. But
Well,
yeah, just like,
lobotomies back in the day, but but that wasn't okay. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
right, we've evolved since then. We don't,
We
we
were
don't
both-
but yeah, like it's one of those things that sure you can be depressed and we have these ideas that oh, depression, there's these certain neurons in your brain that like
yeah.
trigger, we can give you medicine to like help them trigger more or whatever it case may be. I'm not that well versed in psychology, but you have these medications that can help you on that chemical level, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily help you fully in because there's all types of things that could be happening or playing into your depression. It may be both a chemical imbalance. It could also be societal issues. It could also be the environment that you're living in. All of these different things that cannot be solved with medication.
And I think that that is very, very true. I think what people seem to misunderstand is that medication, I feel, when it comes to those situations, it's usually used to curb the more violent disorders, or the ones that, well, no, not because the disorders aren't violent themselves, but sometimes the way they manifest in people can cause violence.
Right.
And sometimes medication is used to help curb those violent tendencies and those specific disorders. But what I found was so interesting was that if you ever, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there was this one woman online. She had DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which is formerly known as multiple personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and she was living her life with her disordered personalities, with the different identities, and the way that the doctors described it was, the reality is we don't know if getting rid of the other personality so that one personality remains is actually beneficial to the person.
Right.
And it's scary because in society, we want people to act a certain way because that is quote unquote normal. But the reality is that is her normal. Her normal is having these people there. And those people in her brain, or those people that the people that were created, these people were all aspects of her personality. They were all deviations from the source. So the way that they described it in the book was that if you take away those personalities, you're killing a part of her.
Exactly.
And we don't know what part of her you're killing, because a lot of times a dissociative identity disorder is usually created from traumatic experiences. So you are literally destroying a piece of someone's psyche, because that identity is an actual person. So with this whole discussion about mental health, the reality is we don't know that that quote unquote mental normality or normalcy or contentment is the base of what humans should be acting as. There are different personalities, just like there are different mental disorders. And I don't honestly believe, I heard this statement, I thought this was pretty cool too, but they said that the reality is everybody in this world will suffer with a mental illness to some extent. To some extent.
Yeah.
Every single person on this earth is going to suffer through a mental illness at some point in their lives. Will it be as dramatic as bipolarism or DID? No, but you're going to go through depression. You might go through grief. These are mental disorders. These are mental illnesses. I think it's called I forgot what the disorder is called for grief, but that's actually a mental disorder. So people don't understand that these things are cycles. These things exist in everybody. So the reality is We need to take away the stigma that mental health is a problem, that someone struggling with a disorder is a problematic, that because they're not acting the way that you want them to act, the way that makes you feel comfortable, does not mean that they are wrong for acting the way they are. Just like there are personalities that you don't like or that you don't vibe with, there's the same is true of disorders. Just because you don't understand them, just because you don't like it, doesn't mean that they can't be it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, just like we accept that every physical body is different. I don't look like you don't look like the next person, whatever. Just as we accept that our bodies are different, our minds are different. Our minds do different things. And like we need to accept that we all don't work in the exact same way.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's the thing that people need to understand is that the reality is mental health is normal. Mental health issues are normal. These are things that should be destigmatized by the media, that we've often seen these elaborate caricatures that every single mental disorder results in violence, that everybody who has bipolarism is about to go kill somebody, that if you got schizophrenia, you're about to murder some people. Like that's, baby, no. Like, and it's
The
actually,
media does so much.
it is actually a very dangerous stereotype that all people with mental issues suffer violent tendencies. Of course, some mental disorders are more commonly violent, but that does not mean that every single person with that particular disorder is going to act that way. What were you about to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the media does so much in how we not only think about mental health, but like our own mental health. Like, I was having a conversation with a friend and we were talking about, oh, it's Black History Month. We should watch like a Black History movie. And then we were kind of talking, and then they were like, well, I don't want to see something traumatic. I don't want to, like,
Yeah.
and that was there something that you think about, like, how many movies are there that center around Black people and Black issues that does not have any form of like trauma? How often do you see
Yes.
Black love just being Black love and not some type of traumatic love? But that's one of the things that the media does. I remember, especially during like the summer, this past summer, of just like so many different instances of traumatic activities, and it's all
Yes.
over your feed. And like at the end of the day, like especially for Black people who are seeing acts of police brutality and stuff like that on Black people, like that's something that can trigger a mental health crisis for somebody. Seeing Black death, seeing all of these different things happening on your feed consistently, that does something to you. That does something to your psyche. So I think a big part of like the media response needs to be normalizing trigger warnings, normalizing being able to like
Yes.
put something before the post to be like, hey, this is what the post is going to be about. If you can't
Yes.
handle it, keep scrolling.
It's about understanding that people don't get that this causes PTSD. That is literally what that happens. And everybody's like, well, PTSD is only from if you actually experience the trauma itself. It's like, no, baby, that's not how that works. Like we did a whole actual chapter on media trauma and how media traumatizes children, about how people show what is it called, the 9/11 films.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I remember and once again, let me be clear. Let me be clear. I, 9/11 and the Holocaust are definitely things that we should never forget. These are things that teach us lessons about never letting something like that ever happen again. You see what I'm saying? But
Right.
people have to understand that I remember in fifth grade, we had to watch all these Holocaust documentaries, all these things about, the Auschwitz, and seeing 9/11, the crashing over and over and over again, and seeing that stuff traumatizes you as a kid. You're like, oh my God, like, for a long time I had such preconceived notions of German people because of the Holocaust movies and films.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the 9/11 films still breed what is it called, when you
Xenophobia.
don't like huh
Xenophobia.
xenophobia. Thank you. You say, bitch, we here with it, xenophobia. It breeds these things, and I think that there should be a kind of what is it like, a de-immersion, what is it called, like a a decompression that should
Mhm.
happen after we have to take in these events and say, listen, this is the Holocaust, this is what happened, but this is not happening anymore. German people there are still Nazis in the world. We know that much.
Right.
But it's not this anymore. Or like the Holocaust or the 9/11. Yes, it did happen, and yes, it was terrorists. But not every person that you see who is of a different cultural nationality or of a what is it called, Muslim national religion,
Religion.
is a terrorist.
Exactly. There probably even going to need to be some type of decompression after we get out of this global pandemic. Because
Yes.
COVID is wrecking people's mental health.
And people don't understand. People kept saying, and I hate it when I see these posts kind of like, if you didn't start a business, if you didn't do this in the COVID, you just wasting your life. It's kind of like, baby, if you was in your room, sleep and just getting through the day, baby, you are okay.
Right.
Not everybody can process trauma, of global trauma, the same way. I think it's disrespectful and it's insensitive to judge people on what they did through COVID. Did you do something productive during COVID? You didn't do nothing, you just lounged around the house all day. Yes, if that's what they needed to do to get through COVID, absolutely.
That's what we should be doing. We should be at home. We shouldn't be out all these different places. But also like that minimizes a the crazy amount of deaths we've had in this
Yes.
United States that could have been prevented. But also just like being able to like see the numbers keep going up and up and up and never having like an end in sight, or even that idea of just like people are paranoid of hanging out with other people because if they're sick then they can get me sick and I can get somebody else sick, and there are really important things that are happening now. There are really true worries and fears that people have that after this pandemic is over, like it will never truly be over because we'll always be dealing with kind of like the aftershocks of like, you know, what does a society look like after COVID? Are we just going to go back to normal, having these packed places, or are people going to be more hesitant and being like, what about when the next pandemic comes? What are we going to do so that we are not in this place again?
Absolutely. I think that is definitely a conversation for another day. I think we have reached the end of our discussion. So it's time for us to move on to my favorite new segment, baby. So many little boys and girls grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to the society and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. So my excerpt today is about John Mercer Langston. He was the first Black man to become a lawyer when he passed the bar in Ohio in 1854. When he was elected the post of the town clerk in Brownhelm, Ohio in 1855, Langston became one of the first African Americans ever elected to public office in America. John Mercer Langston was also the great uncle of Langston Hughes, the famed poet of the Harlem Renaissance, who you may know best from his poem titled Harlem. Let me give you a little excerpt from that real quick. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
Yes, love that.
I'm not no Daquon with the poetry, but that was a little starting from Harlem. That was a little something of a retelling. I ain't no Daquon now, but I was able to do a little something reading that poem from Mr. Langston Hughes.
Right. We stand Langston Hughes. All right, but let's move on to mine. And for my We Did That segment, I wanted to connect it to our topic of mental health to show us not only how we did that, but how we continue to do that. Um, oh, yeah. That's why today I'll be highlighting the amazing, the absolutely extraordinary Taraji P Hinson. Now, many of us know Taraji from her extraordinary filmography, all of the different movies and TV shows she's been in. But do we know that? Did you know that in 2018 she founded a mental health foundation? Yes, she did. The Boris Lawrence Hinson Foundation was founded and named after Hinson's father, Boris Lawrence Hinson, who suffered mental health challenges as a result of his tour of duty in the Vietnam War. The foundation offers scholarships for future mental health professionals, organizes free therapy support groups, and during this pandemic raised enough money for over 1,500 people affected by these unprecedented times to participate in a series of therapy sessions.
I did not know that. I had no clue.
Amazing.
Baby.
Plus, Taraji is, I've always seen Taraji in so many different advertisements or whatever, really stepping up to talk about mental health resources. So, we'll probably have some links down below for mental health resources, but also check out the Lawrence Boris Foundation, Hinson Foundation, because they also have tons of different resources available that are specifically to African American communities.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for that, Daquon. I'm definitely gonna check that out after this. As always, guys, thank you so much for joining our conversation. Just so you guys know, we are a podcast now, officially. We are the Melanin Margin on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. Please don't forget to rate and review, baby. Hey, and listen, honey, listen. So again, thank you so much for watching. Remember, keep the conversation going in the comment box below. We do respond. We do want to hear your thoughts about this conversation that we've had today. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. My name is at Quaviondre or at Andre Talks a Lot. Daquon is at Daquon950.
Yeah.
Yep. And we will see you guys next time. Again, thank you so much. Bye.